let's take a look at table views. Table views are probably the most widely used view in iOS apps. You're more familiar with them than you realize. Probably up until you started this course, you didn't realize there were so many table views around in apps. But by the end of this lesson, you'll be seeing table views in every app you open up. It's a UI table view class that we use, and large amounts of data can be displayed within them in a most magnificent way. And when you do the table views well, your data looks really nice. So with our table views, users can navigate through the hierarchically structured data really easily. If you think of the Contacts app, you scroll through that, that's a type of table view. The table view, the data's actually indexed. It's like an indexed list. You don't necessarily see that when you're using it, but underneath each one of those table cells is indexed. We have detailed information that can be displayed within our table view. It gives us a great way to control what's seen, manipulate how it's visually presented, and they also give us an ability to put controls within the table views so that we can control, add, change, delete the data that's stored in them. So with our table views, how are they made up? Well, to facilitate a large amount of data that we're going to scroll through, we're presented with a single column list. And again, you're familiar with it, scrolling through it. Backwards and forwards, we see it there. The table views can provide headers and footers. Okay? Each row can be divided into sections and groups. And again, you'll be familiar with that from many apps. You probably just haven't actually noticed what's there. Each section can have a header, and that's above the first item, and a footer that sits below the last item. When we tackle the exercises, you're going to see that and you'll be implementing those kinds of things. The table view controllers are really important. And to add table view controllers, we can do this in two different ways. We can add a table view instance directly to a view controller's view. That's the first way. The second way, we add a table view controller straight to the storyboard. So the table view controller is a subclass. It's a view controller subclass, and it has a responsibility to manage a single table view instance. The table view controller is the data source and the delegate. Hear that word? The delegate of the table view. Table view controllers, well, they generally contain a fairly large amount of functionality, and the important thing is to know you actually don't have to code the functionality into it. It's there provided for us. For example, we've all experienced it. We tap on something and the keyboard pops up. And with a well-designed, well-built app, the table view controller will actually move so that the keyboard doesn't cover anything up. So now you know, next time you open an app and you tap on it and the keyboard pops up and stuff disappears, you can say, well, someone didn't implement their table view controllers so well. The benefits of table view controllers means that most of us as developers use them all the time. They are a fantastic way to work with data. So table view styles. We have a plain style, and the plain is exactly that, plain. It's the default style. Rows are separated into just labeled sections. There might be a type of indexing on the right-hand side edge, and the sections just follow on one after the other. There's no spacing, and really it's like an unbroken list. Plain. The second style is the grouped style. Now, this one is visually distinct. And what do I mean by that? It visually distinguishes between groups and sections in spacings. Okay, so we can separate out the rows and add some more information. It makes it great for when we want to break things up into sections so that the user can see more clearly what area of their app they're working in. What about editing the table views? Again, I hate to say it, but you're familiar with it. You've used it all the time when you're editing things on apps. So we can set them as a developer into the edit mode. And when it's in the edit mode, it allows users to do all kinds of things with it. Users might want to insert a new cell. They might want to delete a cell, or they might want to edit, change, modify, or even reorder the cells. And again, it's something that you're familiar with and I'm familiar with. We do it all the time, tapping and holding down, and then we move things up to a different place within the setout. That's table view editing. You can see there's a lot that we can do with table views. And just in case you're wondering, how do I do that? What goes on, David? We'll come to that in the exercises. So at the moment, we're just explaining a few things. And once we jump into the exercises, you'll be doing this in code. So we have table view cells. Every table row is represented with a table view cell, which tends to make sense. Cells are reusable, which is nice, and they can display different things. They can display text, they can display images, or they can display anything else within a UI view. Each cell has an optional accessory view. You can see here in the diagram a really simple layout of it, of which you're looking at that and going, that actually looks familiar. So the table view cell is what displays things from our data. It displays the data. Now, when it comes to editing them, things change. Our cell content size actually shrinks in the edit mode, and it does this to allow space for the editing to occur. It allows for the reordering control to show up. It also allows for the editing control to show up. Looking at the slide diagram, again, it should be familiar. You will have seen this in apps you've used. Now, there's three properties that we define for our cell content. There's the text label, and that's the UI label for the title. There's a detailed text label, which is another UI label, and it's good for our subtitles. And then there's the image view, which is a UI image view for an image. That's the makeup, really, of our table view cells. The next thing we have is an index path. Now, an index path points to a specific row in a specific section of a table view. If you think of, for instance, the contacts app, you can have a lot of contacts, and each one of those cells needs to be indexed so it can be accessed. And it's the row and the section properties that facilitate the access to the data. They are actually like arrays in that they're zero-based. Zero-based, what's that? That's what we've talked about earlier. With Swift, we start counting from 0 rather than 1. Arrays, well, we've talked about them earlier, and you've seen as we've gone through the different places that arrays are used. Now, table views and arrays, where do they link? Well, table views are fantastic for displaying similar data. Arrays are great for storing similar data. And table views are generally undergirded by a collection of model objects. And an array is a good choice for one of those models. It's not the only choice, but it is a good one. Now, one of the reasons it's an excellent choice is it has a property called count, and that tells us how many things are in the array, which when we go to take that data from the array and put it into our table view, we know how big our table view is going to be. Now, in the next course, when we start working with data from the web, what we're going to be doing is we're going to be taking data from the web and bringing it into our apps. And on many occasions, we'll bring the data in, pop it into an array, and then we'll take that array and use the data within it to populate our table views. So you can see arrays and table views work hand in hand, and then we step out to the web and getting data from the web, and we bring that in to populate our app. Now, the last thing we need to do is dequeue a cell. You can imagine that there is a large amount of data, and that would mean we've got a large number of cells. So, on a device, memory is crucial. How are we going to manage this? Well, iOS takes care of a lot of it for us. And to prevent table views from getting huge and unwieldy, what happens is it's taken care of for us so that only the data that's within the view that we can see and a couple above and a couple below are actually loaded. And then as the cell leaves the visible field, that cell can be reused by iOS to continue populating our table views. So this is really dequeuing. It's dequeued and brought back in. And doing this, we use the reuse identifier along with the dequeue reusable cell method. And we'll see these things used when we tackle the exercises. So there's even more to table views. And by this point in time, you're going, even more? I know, but there is. They're extremely powerful and they're very useful. So there's a lot to them. There's a lot more properties. There's a lot more methods. We haven't covered them here in this part, but we will cover several more of them as we go into the exercises. As you continue to develop as an app developer, you'll be needing to read the documentation and understand more of the methods and more of the properties that table views provide us with.